It is Wednesday, and that's Mailbag Day on the old IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince. I'm Sean. Yes, swimming right along. Big thumbs up from Vince. Let me ask you something. I don't know. Like, you've got a lot of kids in your house. Your oldest is what? 16, 17, 16?
Yep, 16.
Are the twins teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Are they Swifties? Are they into like Olivia Rodrigo? You know, like she's one of the big. Do you know?
I don't know what they like. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull the dad card of not knowing. I don't know.
I'm just curious because like between all the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce stuff, with the Chiefs and the
they
NFL,
could care less about that.
And like that's a thing every time you turn on one of those games and any of the other stuff. And then Olivia Rodrigo iPhone commercial. Have you seen it? Where she's like singing.
Oh yeah, like filming the music video thing.
Yeah, like if you've watched any games within the last
yes.
It seems like every game I turn on, there's Olivia Rodrigo. Like she wants to get him back, and it's just like over and over and over, And I'm just curious. And apparently they're like diabolically. I don't know, like
really?
As people, if they're diabolically opposed, but the fans, I don't think like each other because I saw some because how it is. It's like if you watch a game and you've got any Apple products, which I do, they're listening all the time, and so
that's true.
The song plays over and over, and all of a sudden I've got Olivia Rodrigo things popping up in my timeline.
That's and hilarious, by the way.
Apparently, like the Swiftie fans think that Rodrigo is just like copying Taylor Swift. And so I was just curious,
let's just put it this way. They don't bring it up to me.
Okay.
And I know there is no desire by anyone in my family to watch more football because of Taylor Swift. How about that? Like there's no that doesn't exist. I think that they're fans, but they're not like we've got to watch Chiefs games to watch Taylor
because
Swift.
Taylor Swift is on. Yeah,
that is not a thing in any way.
See the handshakes with Brittany Mahomes and all that.
Oh God, it's so. Did you see that they asked Al Michaels like why he didn't like bring it up or whatever, and he's like because it's not a story, or it was something along those because it means nothing. That's what he said.
Right.
And he's 100% correct.
I mean, the only reason that all these other broadcasts have brought her up was because of, the producers in the truck think it's they've got this shiny new toy and they can show Taylor Swift. And apparently one of the first couple games, the NFL did ask all the TV networks that televise their games if they would run free promos for that movie that she's got out.
Oh, interesting.
Right now. And I believe two of them said yes and the others said no. I think that the NFL is trying to get her to do a Super Bowl halftime.
Oh, I'm sure.
Future. I think and I still think that there's a relationship there with, because you've got like Taylor Swift hanging out with not just Kelsey's mom, but there's stuff about the dad now.
Oh, I saw the dad thing. Yeah,
all this
nothing but good things
stuff.
to say. For me, I mean, it's very I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories in general, right? But I will say it is very interesting to me that when this whole kind of relationship saga thing began, it coincided with a lot of Travis Kelce commercials that were clearly already in the can and ready to go.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like that just, it was interesting to me that they just, all of a sudden now it's just,
everything just blew up.
Yeah. Didn't that, I'm not a conspiracy fan. Maybe they've got, a love that is long lasting and all of
I mean, the
things.
Kelce brothers, but they played in the Super Bowl last year and they've got the podcast.
That was a whole thing.
So they were starting to blow up anyway. So I don't know exactly what the timing was and all that stuff.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't care.
Nathan Milton chiming in. Yes, Olivia is copying T Swift. So we've got at least one.
There you go.
There. Olivia copying.
There it is.
T Swift.
Okay.
I don't know. I just know that they're both very, very, both spinning a lot of hits.
Oh, I work with a big time Taylor Swift fan.
Do you?
Oh my goodness. My boss, big time. And my former colleague who now has moved on to a different school, the two of them together, the day that like the tickets went on sale for the Chicago concert last year, had like their laptops out. And they like were walking around school with their laptops trying to get tickets and like the whole thing. We had like a fire drill and they're out, they're huge Swiftie fans. It's a thing like for adults. Like it's
that
a thing.
I know.
I'm glad that my kids aren't that far into it where they're begging me to go to like concerts and stuff. But man,
very fortunate on that count.
Yeah.
Brian says he watches football hoping Creed shows up to play the halftime show. Just watch the World Series. There's no halftime, but apparently they sing higher at Texas Rangers games. The old Creed hit from 20-some years ago or however long it's been. And Creed actually showed up to help them sing it, I think, at one of their last, like during the ALCS. So
okay. Maybe they'll show
the World
up the World
Series. You'll get a little Creed.
There you go.
Okay, well, I see some questions spinning in here, so let's go ahead and get to them. We'll get it off the pop music
Mailbag Wednesday. Mailbag Wednesday, baby.
Yep. Let's just start with this one. Coleman, do you think the coaches have given up on Tobias?
No, not at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. Maybe they're not going to push the ball in his direction this year, but I think we all have to remember he's a redshirt freshman. Sean. They're not going to give up on a redshirt freshman. Okay. He has, I think he's
especially one that's as talented as he is.
That's 100% accurate. So like, I still think he's going to be a good to very good wide receiver for Notre Dame. It's just not, I think we can all say that it's probably not going to be this year. Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. And I think you revisit it and you go back to the drawing board a little bit and you let him have another year of experience under his belt and you see what happens next year. I mean, just because he didn't pop his first year on the field, which was this year, because you remember he played a little bit last year and then got the concussion and that storyline was over. This year was kind of his first foray into starting and playing and all of that. It's 1 year. No, the coaches have not given up on him. No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they're probably trying to figure out how to motivate him at this point.
That's fair.
I think that's got to be part of it, right? With Rico Flores passing him on the depth chart and all of that. We're still going to see him on Saturday. The question is going to be how much. There have been interesting numbers kind of on the rotation, but like Rico Flores has played a lot. And he actually now at this point in the season has played more snaps than I believe any other wide receiver on the team, which is interesting. Now, obviously Jaden Greathouse and Jaden Thomas have both been injured. So that plays into that. I think that Greathouse probably would have Greathouse or Thomas would have the most snaps if they were both 100%. But it's been Rico Flores. He's far ahead of Tobias Merriweather at this point. But I think that's the biggest thing. You got to figure out how to motivate him, keep him engaged. And because he came in with so much talent and expectations, I think that there's kind of a rapid clock in his head in terms of what his career is supposed to be as well. So you do need to get him engaged pretty quickly and get him to producing. I mean, you make a good point about being a redshirt freshman, but at the same time, a lot of talent, a lot of expectations, both internally and externally with Tobias Merriweather. So you've got to, I said yesterday, you've got to get to that point where the production meets the talent. That's the challenge for everybody right now.
And I was wrong. Apparently he played in more than 4 games last year. Oh, so he is at least, according to the depth chart that I just looked up that we got this week, he is listed class sophomore eligibility sophomore. So he must have played in more than 4 games last year, which I didn't think was the case. And it definitely could be a typo as well. But it has him sophomore. So I will take that part of it back. But other than that, I will say that it is still very early in his career. That let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know what I mean? Like, he still has a ton of talent and a ton he can give to this team.
That is something that is easy to find. Let's see, last year's participation.
Look at you.
Chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Man, he played in 7 games.
Did he really? Well, see, there you go. And he only had 1 catch. So
I know. So again, it's like that clock that I was just talking about. The clock is ticking right now. You've got to get him engaged and turn him into a productive receiver, and get him locked in so that he turns himself into a productive receiver. And I think is the biggest thing.
The reason he played so much last year and the reason he's still playing this year is because he does block very well. I mean, that part of his game has not taken a hit. He's still a very good blocker. Now, they need, obviously, for him to be more than just that. He needs to be able to catch the ball, and he needs to be able to do different things. But he still plays because he is able to block at a high level. So,
Brian says, who is the realistic NFL Merriweather comp? Do you want me to take this?
Yeah, because I'm not a big fan of comps, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, one of the 2 St. Browns, I think, is probably the closest.
Which one is it?
I know. Well, I mean, you've got 2 different ends of the spectrum, because Equanimous was more productive than Tobias when he was at Notre Dame, but obviously his production dropped. His last year was at 2017, his last year, but he's been more of a, like deep reserve, sometimes practice squad type guy. But Amon-Ra has become a very productive high-end NFL wide receiver. He didn't get there right away, but so yeah, it's like, I mean, body types are very similar. I think skill sets are very similar. So, I mean, I'm not going to say Jerry Rice, because I don't see, as good as Tobias is, I don't see greatest wide receiver of all time in his future.
And we don't say Randy Moss, because
there's nobody on this roster I see that for. And I mean, and Randy Moss isn't far behind.
Exactly.
Jerry Rice.
They're in the same conversation as far as like greatest of all time. Still Jerry Rice, but Moss is, I mean, he's in the room, as you're discussing this, right? And so, no, we're not going to be putting him in that same conversation. Sorry.
No.
And I think he's joking around, obviously, but look, there's still a lot of football to be played for Tobias. So, yeah, he was disappointing this year. I think we can all appreciate that. We can all say that with confidence, but his career is not over.
Gordian Knot, Irish Gordian Knot says T. Higgins. I mean, I could see T. Higgins, but T. Higgins was also a very productive college receiver who has been like, T. Higgins could be a number 1 receiver if he didn't have, like Jamar Chase where he is. So that might be still a little bit above Tobias's scale. Like, could he turn into that? Sure. But there's still a lot, again, that he's got to get figured out before he gets to that point. So that's why he can't quite leap off quite that far to like a pro. I just won't put him on par with a Pro Bowl level NFL wide receiver right now. The guy's got to show he can do it in college before I even start talking about that. He hasn't done that yet. You're on mute right now.
Sorry, I just said nope. I realized I was on mute, and I was like, I don't know if my nope was all that important.
Joe.pm.17. Dream scenario for 24. Minchie is ready. Carr is too good not to start, or land a big transfer again.
I think I think the dream scenario is the first one. That Minchie is ready to go. Carr is too good not to start. Well, that's fine. He can still be the backup, or however you want to do it. That's a 1-2 punch that I can get on board with. I don't necessarily want them to land a big transfer again. You want to see development within the quarterback position at Notre Dame. I think that's what this team is missing at this point, is the development piece of a quarterback. I haven't seen that in how long, right? And so, look, if there's a big name out there, okay, and it's a name that you just can't pass up, then yeah, you make a run at him, because you're doing your team, your fan base, your school, whatever, a disservice if, and I'm just throwing names out there for fun, if a Caleb Williams or a Drake May or somebody like that is out there and has interest in Notre Dame, and you're like, nah, we're good. We've got a kid who's never played before who we're ready to go with.
Right.
Like, you're doing them a disservice, right? But if there's not that guy out there, then yeah, you hope that it's Minchie or Carr or that kind of a thing. So preferably it's the first one, but if that big fish is out there, you make a run at him.
I agree. If it's some, big dog, like I'm trying to like you use Caleb Williams as a reference. A lot of people hot after Riley Leonard. I don't know that that's the guy.
I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's got a ton more experience.
But he's a good quarterback with a specific style.
Yeah,
I just don't think that it, again, like when you go to, are you advancing your quarterback development by bringing in Riley Leonard, or are you suiting everything to suit his style for 1 year?
Right.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, he obviously brings a lot of experience, that whole thing. He's a poor man's Sam Hartman to me. And that's not really what I want. I'd rather go the other route in that particular case.
Yeah, me too.
He's not the big fish. He's not the big fish I'm talking about.
Like, I'm fine with Minchie or Carr being the guy next year. Like, assuming they're ready.
As soon as they're ready, assuming they're ready, right? And I still say you've got to go to the transfer portal and bring in a veteran quarterback, who, can back up. Okay. I still think you need the depth, but not somebody that you're planning on starting.
I mean, who's gonna want to come to Notre Dame
of them out there.
There's plenty of guys who just want to come and stand on the sideline for a year.
Oh,
their final year of eligibility.
To go to Notre Dame and get a free education? 100%.
But they're getting free educations at other places.
But
they're only coming here for 1 year.
They'd be coming to Notre Dame. I'm talking about a graduate transfer who comes over to get his master's degree at Notre Dame. I'm telling you, there's guys out there that would do that.
I don't see it.
There was a guy
from the Ivy League.
This is a different, institution, but Clemson, I believe, brought in a veteran backup quarterback to back up Klubnik this year. Knew he wasn't going to start, but just comes in.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's an Ivy League guy, I could see it because they're not getting any scholarships out there. They've already got a really good degree. They could be part of a big program. Yeah. Like an Ivy League guy. Sure, I could see that kind of guy.
Like but that's what I'm talking about. Like a veteran guy who started some games, like he pretty much knows his football, but he's a guy that you would feel comfortable handing the reins over if there was a massive injury, that kind of a thing. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Nathan wants to know which Notre Dame player that transferred from Notre Dame was the most disappointing, weird, surprising. This is an interesting one.
I mean,
think about
Phil Dracovic.
That's a really good one.
I think that's where this conversation comes from, right? Or this question comes from, since it's Pitt week. He would be the biggest disappointment. I mean, holy smokies. Like, Joe's got one. Joe PM17 says Jordan Johnson. I think that's a pretty good one. He was the precursor to Tobias Merriweather. Why are they not getting him the football? And then he left and still hasn't played.
And look where it's turned out. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I think those are good. I'm stumped to think of anybody else off the top of my head right now. I mean, I guess
a lot of kids have transferred out.
I was a little surprised, when Gunnar Kiel took off.
Yeah. Okay.
Talk about big time quarterbacks, but again, look how it worked out for Gunnar Kiel after he left. After all that flip-flopping and switching around,
doesn't have the chest. Yeah. Remember that whole thing?
That's right. Old Les Miles didn't have the chest for Les Miles.
It's like somebody said Diggs, but he's having success. Like, that's not a disappointment for him. Maybe it's a disappointment for Notre Dame fans, but Notre Dame's running back room is way better than LSU's running back room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now it is. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, and when you sit and look at at Diggs. He's closer to home, all those different things. I think, it worked out. I think it worked out for everybody. He's playing down there. He's closer to home. Notre Dame is doing just fine without him. So
they're not losing any sleep,
Had a Notre Dame basketball question or two.
What?
Do you think JR plays more this year? Being a junior now, if he doesn't step up now, he'll never play.
Oh, Coleman, have you seen the Notre Dame roster? He's going to play, okay? They were picked last in the ACC. JR is going to play. JR is now the veteran on the team. So he's going to play.
JR and Matt Zona. That's
and I guarantee you, at least at the beginning of the season, those two are going to be in the starting lineup. I have pretty much full faith that that's the case.
And at Media Day last week, Micah Shrewsbury was talking about, just like his, all the effort, like he's going at it, going hard all the time, really trying to show himself, and good for him, if that's the case.
Yep.
And I would just think, with the roster that they've got, I would think that just about all those guys are going to play.
Oh my gosh. Especially the older guys too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like they stuck it out and they're going to get rewarded for sticking it out. Now, I would hope, maybe not with wins, but they're going to get rewarded with playing time, at least at the beginning. I think at least at the beginning, because at least they've got some experience, being in college and have an opportunity to have, more filled out physique, all of those different things that can help you in ACC play and things like that. So I do think he's going to get some playing time.
They've got the kind of games in November and into December. Like they've got some tough games. Like they've got Auburn, they've got a couple other tough non-conference games, but they've got their typical games where you can get some of these guys out there and really kind of test the rotation. And again, that's something that Shrewsbury said that he would probably do next, in these first few games in November is kind of experiment, not totally experiment, but roll some guys out there, see what he's got. It's like you're taking this thing over, and these were the only three guys who stuck around.
Right, exactly.
After Mike Bray left. So I mean, I think we'll see more of him, at least early on. What happens after that?
He's going to have to earn it. I think he's going to have to earn it, because I do think that there's some talent in the freshman class, right? But that's the majority of the roster. And so he's going to, I think he's going to give the older guys an opportunity to kind of prove themselves and earn some spots and things of that nature. And if it's not going well, which I don't really anticipate, other guys are going to get some chances too.
Yeah. And Coleman said just thoughts on the men's basketball team. And I think they're going to take some lumps early on because they are so young, and they've got some nice experience, like with Keba Njai and, a couple of these transfers that they got coming in, but it's not like any of these guys were like the studs of their team from where they came. They're looking for some opportunities coming here as well. But I also think that Shrewsbury's kind of looking for a specific kind of guy who's going to kind of grind you and get down and dirty and play some physical basketball and that kind of stuff. So they'll take some lumps. I'll be curious to see if they kind of gain some momentum, though, as the season goes along, as they start playing, getting used to playing for him, getting used to playing with each other. He said, something else that he said last week was his 2 years at Penn State, they were playing their best basketball at the end of the season. They were the 10 seed in last year's Big Ten tournament and got all the way to the championship game and ended up making the NCAA tournament as the 10 seed in their own conference tournament. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to make the NCAA tournament in year one, but I think really all you can ask is that they get better as this season goes along, that he gets another recruiting cycle under his belt and build off that
for sure
next year. This is really just kind of almost a grand experiment for everybody, because there's just so much unknown the way he had to cobble together a roster the way he did.
And I think we all like what we're hearing, from him. He's saying all the right things, right? How does that translate to on the court success or whatever? I think is obviously one of the bigger question marks. But I will say this, and I've been around a lot of basketball. I've coached some basketball, things of that nature, right? I was always a big fan of defense. You play tough defense, you get turnovers, you play physical defense, that turns into offense, fast breaks, all that kind of stuff. So if that's what I see from this team, just like a hard-nosed defensive first team, that's a huge step in the right direction because you can create offense off of that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be a slowed down half court type offense. You can create offense off of fast breaks. And that's, defense into fast break is going to get the crowd going. It's going to get people to like what they're seeing on the floor, because people can appreciate effort and they can appreciate the hard-nosed defensive style. You know what I mean? And so if I see that, regardless of whether it produces wins, right away, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. So that's what I'm hoping to see going into the season.
Yeah. James asks if I'm going to Paris. I will. Oui.
Yeah, oui.
Bonjour. I will be going to Paris next week. What day is today? 1 week from today. The wheels lift off from O'Hare, so we'll be flying out.
You gotta be excited about that, man.
I am. It's like I'm still doing my French lessons every night and not getting really any farther along. I'm still saying hello and goodbye to everybody and introducing myself. Je suis Sean, so.
I can't wait to hear the stories of you trying to talk to people over there. That's
I know.
Fantastic.
I know. Should be interesting. And then Keith says, can't wait for October 30th, getting to see the women's team in action. Yep, next Monday, the 30th, first exhibition game. Exhibition game Monday, fly on Wednesday, and then they open up the season November 6th, a week from Monday. So it's exciting. A lot back. They were picked to finish second in the preseason poll today. I was a little surprised, I have to say. They picked, it's a vote. So,
Sure.
It is what it is. People vote the way they want to vote. It was relatively close, but Virginia Tech picked to finish first. They went to the Final Four last year. I think that kind of fueled a lot of it. And they've got the two-time defending player of the year, Elizabeth Kitley, back, and a good point guard as well. So they were picked to finish first. Notre Dame picked to finish second after winning the regular season last year. They went to the Sweet 16. So I think it's going to be another competitive year in the conference. Should be good. Notre Dame's beaten Virginia Tech the last couple of years, though. So they get them here at Purcell this season.
Beautiful.
So that'll be fun, too. Kind of like that.
Love it.
Joe says, who would you rather see Notre Dame play in the rotation more, Michigan or Michigan State?
Like, what rotation are we talking about? Just in all rotation, like a mythical rotation for Notre Dame?
I get, they rotate on and off the schedule, I guess, maybe on a somewhat regular basis is kind of how I read it.
I mean, everybody's going to want Michigan. I personally like Michigan State better, but that's just me. But I understand why the fans would want Michigan in somewhat of a rotation. Or you could have both of them, and you can go home and away with one and then home and away with the other. I would be okay with that as well.
If I had to choose one or the other, I would take Michigan just because maybe it would be different if it is an intermittent, sort of series and it's just Michigan State like every 6 to 10 years or something like that. But when it was every year, to me, it was just another one of those, along with Purdue and Boston College and Pittsburgh, you can lump it in there as well. When they were playing those teams somewhat regularly, it's like all those series meant more to the other teams than they meant to Notre Dame. And like those teams just like got so wound up, and the fans, as well. I mean, Notre Dame, Michigan, I know you hate Michigan. I don't like Michigan either, but I don't probably hate them quite as much as you do at this point. But at the same time, it's like there's proximity to Michigan. There's a lot of Michigan fans. There's a lot of Michigan State fans around town as well.
But the Michigan fans are louder.
Yeah, and it's a higher profile program, and it's a series I think that has meant more, especially from a national perspective, Notre Dame and Michigan. So I would rather see that one played more often.
Fair. Well, and especially right now. I mean, Michigan State is so down. That game would not be exciting in any way, shape, or form, and I get that. It would be a much bigger game if they played Michigan, a much bigger game, and I would love to embarrass Michigan and point out all of their flaws and everything for the not number 2 team in the country that they are. But,
Josh says, if Notre Dame goes 10-2 and gets to a New Year's Six bowl, do any of the players sit out?
I always want to say no to this question because I think that that's an important game, right? And I would like to think that the players would agree with me on that. The problem is this is becoming more and more of a business every single day, right? I'm trying to think of the players that would have the opportunity to sit out where it would make sense from a draftability standpoint, right?
Joe Alt
would be the number 1 guy, and I just don't see him doing it. I see him playing.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
People would say Sam Hartman, but I think Sam Hartman needs to play in a big stage. I still think he needs to prove, who he is and all of that. I think the bowl game could be a mover for him, either up or down people's draft boards. So I don't think he sits out, to be honest with you. And you go across the board with all the different positions. Does Audric Estime sit out because he's going to go to the NFL? That's a possibility, I suppose. I can't think of anybody on defense that would sit out. No. Cam Hart, maybe from an injury standpoint. If he makes it through the rest of the season without getting injured, do you
think Riley Mills is the only one of the few? Mills or Cross would be the possibilities in terms of draft eligible type guys. It doesn't seem like they probably would.
It doesn't feel that way though, does it? No. I think we all knew Michael Mayer was going to sit out last year. I think Kyron Williams was a pretty easy one, but those are the only 2, right, that sat out last year. And it wasn't even a New Year's Six bowl, right?
Yeah, Gator Bowl last year.
Gator Bowl, yeah.
Michael Mayer and Isaiah Foskey were the 2 who sat.
Kyron Williams was the year before.
It's almost like a status symbol. It's like, I'm going to sit out the bowl game.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, I understand. You don't want to take the pounding.
From a running back standpoint, I would understand Audric Estime sitting out, and I would be okay with it because there's so much talent behind him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Frank McCattry said, Jeremiah Love might put up 200 yards in a bowl game. If he's the featured back, that could be a lot of fun to watch. You know what I mean? And it's nothing against Estime. He's just different. He's a different back.
Did you say Estime? He would be a possibility,
right?
I guess potentially.
And I could see that. I would be okay with it. You know what I mean? I would be okay with him sitting. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't see a slew of guys sitting out.
I agree. I think the ones that we mentioned are the best possibilities, and it's just so hard because it's an individual thing on sort of how players think about it.
And it depends on who they've got whispering in their ear, and that whole thing too. And I know Brian and Ryan, they kind of know that side of things a little bit better than we do, as far as who's talking in their ears and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that part of it. And there could be some very influential people telling them, hey, let's, sit out.
Right.
So, that's always a thing.
And they can have agents now at an earlier stage
also
as
true.
well because of NIL. And so those guys are already talking to them. So that can be a big factor as well.
For sure.
Joe PM 17, best scenario for replacing Bayless next season. Super underrated coaching position, in his opinion.
Oh, it might be underrated to the fans, but it is not underrated to head football coaches. They know how important the strength and conditioning program is. And that's one of the reasons one very small reason that Coach Bayless is not the strength and conditioning coach at Notre Dame anymore, because there were some pretty passionate arguments being made by the head coach that he didn't agree with. Right. And, so that was, they know how important it is. I think there's going to be, this is the best case scenario, and I don't have names because that's not really my job, is to know who all the strength and conditioning coaches are out there. But there's going to be a national search, I would imagine, which has probably been ongoing since the day he decided to leave, but they got to wait till the end of the season, realistically. So it's going to be a national search, and he's going to get the best guy out there because the strength coach is the head coach of the offseason.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good guy in place, man, you might as well just pack it in right away. So I think that we will see that position be filled relatively quickly as soon as the bowl game is over, I would think.
Right. You would think December they go to work on that.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Like I said, I think they've been working on it already. I have no inside information on that, but I would say that, the wheels are moving already.
Yes. The Brackles? Any chance Notre Dame could still make the college football playoffs?
I mean, it's like Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance. It's like a 1% chance, and literally World War III would have to happen around them for them to have an opportunity. No two-loss team has ever made it into the college football playoffs.
And the problem they have right now is there are no signature wins to be had in front of them because Clemson is bad.
Yeah,
they have no signature wins. They've lost to Ohio State. They've lost to Louisville. So
you reverse one of those losses, they got a shot.
Yeah, and the USC game doesn't look as impressive.
It looked great that night, but then the week happened, and they got beat by Utah, and I think there's a few more L's on USC's schedule moving forward too. So,
you're just not going to sway anybody by winning out against Pittsburgh, Clemson, Wake Forest, and Stanford. It's and no conference championship game to be played. Now you run the table a year from now, and you're sitting there at 10-2. You're probably in a 12-team playoff.
Oh, a 12-team playoff? I think Notre Dame would be in. If they win out, I think they're in because I think they'd end up being a top 10 team. And remember, Notre Dame has to be top 11 really to be in because the top ranked group of 5, gets in. So you figure they're probably not going to be in the top 12. So you got to be top 11 to get in. Notre Dame's sitting at 14 right now with 4 games to play. And a lot of those teams above them play each other. Mm-hmm. So if this was next year, if we're sitting here a year from now and the exact same circumstances, Notre Dame's going to get in if they win out. I have full faith in that. And
there's just no way they're getting to the top 4.
No, there's not. And I would say that there was a decent chance that they would host a game because you got to be top 8 to host a first round game. And so I would say there was an outside chance they have, to host. That's what you'd be hoping for, right? You would hope some things fall your way so that you can host. That's what we would be talking about next year. But it's not next year. You're not going to get to the Final Four. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Not this year. You definitely couldn't afford the loss to Louisville. And
that's what did them in. I mean, you can explain away the Ohio State loss because it was the last second, they were leading, all of those different things, right? You can explain that away. Plus, it was like week 3 or 4 or whatever it was, right? Like it happened early on, all of that, right? But you can't lay an egg to Louisville like that. And they laid a ostrich-sized egg in that game.
Yep.
And you can't explain that one away.
Joe says, rumor has it Clemson's hired someone to look at a chance to get out of the ACC. Where do they go? The SEC.
They could have hired me for $20 and a supersized meal at McDonald's to tell them the only way out is to pay $250 million or whatever the number is. Like, what is there to hire a guy to do?
That's all they're doing. It's like you can hire. Yeah, you can. You can hire a consultant. It doesn't mean you're going to get out. It's like it's one thing to want out. It's another thing to actually have the ability to do it. Everyone wants out of prison while you're there, but
exactly.
Not everyone gets paroled, right?
Seriously, like it seems silly to me that they would waste their money on a position like that when anybody can tell them that that's not going to happen unless you write a fat check.
If they could get out without paying the kind of money that's been reported, they would have done it already.
Right.
It's just, so I don't know. We'll see.
That seems odd to me that they would waste their money like that, but okay. I mean, good for you.
Right.
How appealing is Clemson as an SEC edition at this point?
Honestly, I don't think it's that appealing.
That's what I'm saying.
The condition, the Dabo Swinney is at a really pivotal point in his career and in Clemson's future, because let's remember, there's only been one other small window of time where Clemson football was a national player, and that was a long time ago. In this window that they have been in, hats off to Dabo for getting him there. But
of course,
everyone else is playing by a different set of rules right now. He still thinks based on the way he's operating right now, he still thinks that his recruiting is the thing to push this team forward. But I mean, DJ Uiagalelei is doing better at Oregon State without Dabo in that offense this year.
Yeah.
And Dabo doesn't want to bring in transfers. So is he going to do what Mike Krzyzewski did and make a do a 180 on, Mike Krzyzewski said, well, we're not going to recruit one and dones. And then that didn't get him very far for a couple of years. And so he went all in on the one and done type guys. And they had a heck of a lot more success.
Well, and it's, I mean, Brian made a point on Monday that, where Clemson is right now. And we've talked about, is this the end of Clemson? Not the end, but like is they're headed this direction, right? And I'm pointing down for those that are listening. They're headed in the wrong direction right now. And he basically said right now, with the Notre Dame Clemson game coming up, it's like somebody handed Notre Dame the plug for Clemson, and they're on life support. And if Notre Dame goes in there and pounds on Clemson, it's just like unplugging that thing. And that might be the end of their dynasty at that point. They got a lot of work to do to get back up to the upper echelon of college football.
And what Michael Hahn is saying here, I've heard this before as well. He says, rumor is the SEC doesn't want the ACC to implode because that would mean Notre Dame to the Big Ten, which strengthens their top conference rival. So the SEC wants Notre Dame to stay independent. And, and you've got to remember that ESPN is also TV partners with both the ACC and the SEC now with, the new contract next year. So like for Greg Sankey, there's more incentive for him, to keep the ACC afloat with Notre Dame being a part of that. And I have heard that remember Greg Sankey and Jack Swarbrick were two of the original architects of the whole 12 team, expanded playoff that the Pac-12 and the ACC and everyone shot down at first. And then they ended up going back to him, but everyone was mad at Sankey and mad at people in the ACC were mad at Swarbrick about it. But, there's been that relationship. And I've heard that as well, because it's absolutely right. If the ACC does fall apart, then if Notre Dame is pushed into a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten at that point, and that's not good for the SEC. So I've definitely heard this theory floated around by a few, kind of like the media types with their ears, to the tracks and that kind of stuff.
It's interesting because this is borderline conspiracy theory. Like it's right there. You know what I mean? But I get it. Like I see the trail, right? I see the path. It makes sense. I just wonder if that's how much thinking goes into it. Like, well, if I do this, then this. And like, the way they've been snatching up, and by they, I mean the Big Ten, the SEC, the way they've been snatching up schools left and right, I'm wondering if they have actually looked at the consequences of doing so. Because I feel like, getting all those West Coast teams to play on the East Coast and all of those, like, it just doesn't feel like a whole lot of thought process has gone into it, except we got to make the football stronger. I just feel like a lot of it's going to backfire at some point, but
I agree.
Maybe.
Yep. It's kind of like the cable bundle, everyone's, cutting the cord and going to streaming and all this stuff. And now you've got to get like 15 different streaming platforms to watch everything that you want to watch and all that kind of stuff. And everyone's going, well, why don't, is there a place that we could go where we could just have it all in one place? Yeah, it's called cable. And then you walked away from cable. I think eventually in like 10 years, it's probably all going to go back to,
it's so funny.
Something's going to go back to, but it's like that, like with all this conference stuff, everyone's splintering off and,
right.
As we've talked about, you've got West Coast teams playing in the Midwest and all this different stuff. I think at some point they're going to realize, this really makes a lot less sense than we thought it did. And they'll probably end up going back to their little fiefdoms and playing their little, regions in different parts of the country once again. But it'll take probably 15 or 20 years to get to that point, back to that point.
It's just like bell bottoms are coming back, baby.
Yeah.
So will the conferences. Let's go.
That's right. Milton, thanks for the super chat. Which household item would you compare Brian Kelly to?
Oh my gosh. I didn't see this one roll through because if I did, I would have been thinking about it for a while. A household item. So that just means anything in the house?
Yeah.
Because I feel like he's like one of those dolls with the pull string in the back. And you just pull it, and then like another cliche comes out.
I like that.
Pull it, and another cliche comes out. Like,
yeah,
that's the first thing that came to mind.
I mean, I don't know, your TV for the same reason. It's like you
Right.
turn it on, and something's going to come out of it. It doesn't have to make any sense, but something's going to come out of it. So I guess it serves some purpose, but what real purpose? I don't know. That's the best I can do right now.
That's a tough one. I'm sure there's a better answer out there for both of us.
Yeah.
I'm looking around like my office, like I'm looking for stuff. How about like a spatula because he flips so much?
That's a good one.
How about
that?
That's
a really good one.
I don't know.
I like that.
Oh, somebody said BK. Here we go. BK is a Teflon pan that looks pretty, but doesn't work when you cook in a very important meal and nothing sticks. I like that one, David. That's a pretty good one.
It's a really good one. Especially spur of the moment.
I know, right? Teflon pan. That's good.
Another super chat from Tyler. If you have the power to punish Michigan, what would you do?
I mean, what would I do? I would tell them they can't play football anymore, but that, there obviously the rule is in there. The rule is spelled out. You can't record in person, whatever, right? So you have to, the punishment has to fit the crime, right? And so I'm going to try to be a unbiased person here. Head coach is going to get suspended again, probably. And maybe you take a couple of scholarships away, like 5, you know what I mean? I doubt it might even be too harsh for this. The problem is it's an ongoing thing. And I think that's what has to be taken into account. It's a bunch of little stupid stuff that Michigan continues to do that is against the rules. And they're like, oh, our bad. We didn't know. Like, yeah, you did. And so, as we call it in student services, this is accumulated misbehavior.
Yeah.
And once you get to a certain point, now we start suspending, right? That's what we do at school. Like, okay, it's a lunch detention. It's an after school detention. It's a talk. It's a call home. Now we're going to have a suspension. Like, I feel like we've accumulated some time here where maybe some scholarships need to go away. Maybe the head coach needs to be suspended for games that matter as opposed to their ridiculous non-conference schedule, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that could be an easy one. The Big Ten could do it quicker, but I don't think, there's no incentive for the Big Ten to lay the hammer down on them because Michigan's one of their bell cows. So, I mean, like you could easily say you're suspended for your conference championship game and at least your first playoff game, assuming you're going to play, or your whatever your postseason game is. Like I've seen a lot of people say bowl ban. They're trying to do away with some of that stuff.
Are they?
The
okay.
NCAA and in terms of both basketball and football postseason bans and stuff like that. They're trying to get away from some of that stuff as punishments. I think personally, you don't see enough monetary fines being doled out when it comes to college athletics. And, look, I think people are looking at this as a victimless crime, but big time college athletics, and the Big Ten is obviously big time college athletics. It is a cutthroat business, and livelihoods are on the line when you're playing these games. That is why Michigan was willing to go to the lengths that they have gone to steal the signs from these other, so like other coaches have been.
They don't feel like this is victimless. Yeah,
right.
The other coaches don't feel like this is victimless. They go to great lengths to protect their signs. With they have like the things behind them, or they go to great lengths to protect their signs because the NCAA doesn't do the speaker in the helmet, and so you've got to have signs. And I get that they're a little ticked off. right? Because if Michigan's doing it, why couldn't they be doing it? And
well, if you listen to Michigan
crime.
fans, everyone's doing it, and this isn't a big deal. But that's total garbage.
Well, I heard that today in a meeting, actually, from a Michigan fan. So.
Of course you did. And it's all Michigan. Like, no, I'm sorry. Not everyone is paying people. Not everyone is buying tickets for people to go to other people's games and record their signs because it is against the rules.
Correct.
Like Jesse and I talked about this yesterday. It's no different than the Houston Astros thing. It's one thing if you are standing on the sideline in a game and you're looking at the other team's sideline with your own eyes and trying to decipher and steal signs over the course of a game.
That's gamesmanship.
That's
I have no problem with that.
It's another thing when you're involving technology and doing it in advance. It's simply not allowed. I'm sorry. And not everyone is doing it. I'm sorry. Yep. And again, the Michigan fans are trying to act like we're all naive because we don't think, oh, of course everyone's doing it. No, just you and your cheating coaching staff are doing it. There might be a handful of other schools, but they're all going to cover their tracks a heck of a lot better than what this Scallions guy did. It's like using his own name to buy these tickets all over the country. And it's, again, every day something new comes out. Like he was buying tickets to SEC games and, to games of teams that they might be playing in the playoff for the last couple years. So my point was going to be, I think you need to hit the head coach in the pocketbook, find him at least $1 million for this. And the school as well, and maybe forfeit a couple, some victories along the way. But that's what, I think if you want to keep coaches and schools from doing this, hit them in the pocketbook. That I don't think that's done enough in college.
You have to make them regret this.
Yeah,
that's what you have to do. You have to make them feel it. You got to make them feel it. However that is, you've got to make them feel it. Because at first when I heard about this, I was like, oh, well, they're just, they're stealing signs. It's not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal with the way that they're doing it. Again, it's not like baseball when you're sitting in the dugout and you're watching the third base coach and you're trying to figure out what the bunt sign is. You know? That's gamesmanship. You're allowed to do that. That's what you should do, right? But I'm not sending my coaches to other games to videotape the third base coach and then decipher what those signs. That's not okay. That is not scouting, right? Exactly. That's not scouting. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Okay, Vince, a lot of good questions tonight. We went for
you're right.
Quite a while.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize what time it was.
I know. I just looked at the clock, and that makes me want to say, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am so ready for rapid fire because I didn't know what time it was.
I didn't either. Got to get out of here and eat some dinner at some point.
Man.
Okay, so when asked about which young guys have stood out recently, and specifically during the bye week, Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden said freshman linebacker Drake Bowen, quote unquote, is getting close. So do you buy or sell more of Drake Bowen at middle linebacker down the stretch for the Irish?
I will buy it because of the competition that they've got down the stretch. I mean, they're markedly better than 3 of the 4 teams that they're going to play. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I believe that there's going to be opportunities for him to play more, right? And to get JD some rest. All right. So I do buy it. And the other reason I buy it, not only the competition that's forthcoming, but also that's a name that he specifically brought up, right? He could have given a very coach word salad about, the young guys are all coming along, et cetera, et cetera. But he brought up Drake Bowen, is what it sounds like. He brought him up specifically when the question was asked. So that tells me that he is legitimately getting closer and that we will end up seeing more of him.
Yeah, exactly. I think the exact same thing. And I think that when you've got the luxury of having the veteran linebackers around him and getting him out there and giving him some opportunities, and like you said, they are going to be definitely better than 3 of the 4 teams that they're going to play. So I think it's a perfect opportunity. This guy has already been on the field. He's played a ton of special teams, so you don't have to worry about red shirts or any of that kind of stuff. The only question is, do you think he's ready or not? And as you said, Al Golden specifically singled this guy out, threw his name out there. So I definitely think we need to see some more of this guy. I would actually be very excited to see more of Drake Bowen here. down the stretch in these
Yeah,
last
I
4
agree.
games.
I agree.
Speaking of red shirts, 4 games to go. There are some potential decisions for the coaching staff to make. Not a ton when you start looking at, I've kind of been looking at that participation chart a little bit more during the bye week, seeing who's played and who hasn't and stuff like that. Boubacar Traore has played 3 games. So do you play him in at least 2 more games of these 4, 5 with the bowl game, obviously, but do you play him at least 2 more games, or do you just keep it to 1 and preserve the red shirt for a year? What do you do with Boubacar?
I would preserve his red shirt. I would play him 1 more game. I don't know that he's a candidate to be out of here in 3 years, right? I don't know if he's a candidate to be out of here in 4 years, but as a lineman, a lot of those guys stick around for 5. I would preserve that red shirt unless there are injuries that would prop him up. But at this point, honestly, I'd play him at Clemson and then save him the other games.
I think that would make a lot of sense. And that's, like for as little as he played against USC, I was kind of surprised to see him in that situation against USC because he had only played 2 games prior to that, obviously. And I completely agree. I think that this is a guy, you've got enough depth there for this year that unless you do end up getting an injury or two at that position, I think that you're better off doing exactly what you said. Maybe you play him in the Clemson game. Maybe you save him for the bowl game, one of the 2, depending on what the roster looks like and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I would try to preserve that redshirt year if I can, because this is a really talented guy who I think has opportunity to do some really good things over the next few years.
Yeah.
So I would try to preserve that if I could.
Yep. Me too.
What about Jaden Osbury? Even more interesting because he is sitting right on 4 games right now. So the decision is, does Jaden Osbury get to play at all the rest of the season? Or again, do you try to preserve him?
See, this one's a tough one because he's basically played special teams up to this point, right? And I think some of the freshmen, they're kind of like, allowing them to play 4 on special teams and then putting a different freshman in their spot to play another 4, like that kind of a thing. I don't have Jesse facts to back that up. But I feel like that's the case.
Jesse facts.
But for him, I think there's some opportunity for him to actually play some in these last few games that would be very important for him moving into next year, because I think he's got a real opportunity to start next year, potentially. If things kind of go the way I think they may go with guys leaving and, things of that nature, right? I would burn his red shirt. I would. If he's already got 4, you've only played 8 games, I probably would burn it.
I think I would too, because again, like there's so much upside with him that if things like you're trying to predict the future to an extent, but
that's true.
Let's say even, if you kept the red shirt, okay, then he's got 4 more years. If you don't, then he's got 3. I would think that with his ability, by the end of the next 3, like he's
at the end of a full 4-year college, full year.
That's going to be enough for him. And he's probably going to be off to the NFL. I don't think that it's going to be.
And it's different for his position versus a lineman too, because for me, a lineman needs a little bit more development physically, right?
Strength.
And that's exactly right. And so that's why I'm not playing Boubacar, but I am going to play Osbury, because that extra year in the weight room for Boubacar can make a big difference for him as opposed to Osbury. So that's also comes into play for me.
Yeah. Mr. 2.0, you don't need him for 5 years if you continue to recruit. And that's a great point as well.
I get that too. Yeah.
You expect more guys to be coming in behind him who are going to be able to fill that seat. Jordan Faison, we've kind of talked about him before, but I thought somebody might bring him up. I think that, he's played in 2 games. I think we're both of the mind that you just like, you don't give him the scholarship if you're not going to play him.
Listen, he's second on the depth chart right now. He's in the rotation.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to,
you need him now.
Yeah.
That's why you gave him a scholarship.
And that's the other thing about the depth chart, right? it depends on for each one of these guys, it depends on where they land on the depth chart. He's number 2. He's on the depth chart, literally. That's not a guy that you're considering redshirting. You gave him a scholarship. You've decided he's playing for you. You play him. No question.
I concur. You need every bit of Jordan Faison right now. There's no reason to think about redshirting him. He scored a touchdown for you in one game, and he helped set up another touchdown for you in the next game against USC. He's got something that, the rest of the roster is lacking to different extents and for different reasons when you've got guys with hamstring injuries, but he's got a lot of speed, and they need that speed out there right now. Here's one that Salty gave us yesterday that we didn't get to. Is the Heisman Trophy as prestigious now as it once was?
Oh, that's a simple answer for me.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not as prestigious as it used to be.
Used to be probably the might have been the biggest award in the country there for a while.
Yeah.
Pro or amateur. I think like it really meant something to win the Heisman Trophy,
and I just don't think it does anymore. It kind of has fallen.
Just another award.
Because there's so many friggin' awards now as well. All the different positions have an award. The interior line has an award. Just so many awards out there. First of all, and the Heisman isn't the best player in college football anymore. It's just not. Yeah. It's generally 9 times out of 10. It's the best quarterback on the best team.
Yep.
And that's, I don't know.
Which is why JJ McCarthy is the front runner in Vegas for the award.
Ridiculous because I'm sorry. He has done what? Explain to me his Heisman moment.
Doesn't have one.
Not even close, in my opinion. So that's why it doesn't mean anything.
I mean, he's got an analyst out there stealing signs, giving him the blueprint to succeed, and they're out there bludgeoning teams that aren't any good. That's the thing too. It's like, it's one thing if you're going to steal signs from Penn State and Ohio State. They're stealing signs, from like everybody in the Big Ten. I mean, do you really need to steal signs to go out there and beat Purdue? I mean, come on, Indiana, give me a break.
Right, exactly.
But back to, I mean, it absolutely is not nearly the prestige that it once had. Probably 30 years ago. How long has it been? At least 20 or 25 years.
Yeah,
since it really meant something.
Yeah,
I think
that's accurate. And it just loses every
It's mostly by default because of what you said. It's the best quarterback most of the time on the best team, and then if they can't find, like if that team doesn't happen to have the best quarterback, then you give it to a wide receiver like Alabama had a couple of years ago, it's or maybe a running back. But again, it's been like the best player on Alabama, is what it was for a while.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Do you have 3 top candidates for the Heisman right now?
I mean, my thinking on that, I didn't look at any lists on purpose for this. Like, I'm just going like off the top of my head based on what I've seen and things of that nature. I mean, I think Michael Penix is in the conversation. I think, Bo Nix has probably fallen out of the conversation because of the head-to-head.
Still has the 4th best odds.
So so he's still in the conversation, right? Who else has really just been?
No one really has gaudy numbers. Right now. Like before the Notre Dame game, Caleb Williams deserved to probably be sitting at the top of the list. He had 20 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yeah,
now the last 2 weeks, he's completely taken himself out of there.
Yeah.
I think it's JJ McCarthy by default because of how you defined it, just a minute ago. Best player, best quarterback, best team, but he's done nothing special. You're right.
Yeah.
He's had no Heisman moment. Penix, I would put at the top of the list. Jaden Daniels at LSU has the 3rd best odds right now, and it's like the guy's got 2 losses already. What has he done? That's anything?
I think if the Hunter kid didn't get hurt, he could have put his name up there because of the two-way, because that's such a unique situation, and he was pretty darn good on both sides of the ball. But missing those games, I think, hurt his candidacy. And look, I never thought Shedeur was a candidate for the Heisman Trophy. but they've lost way too much for him to even be considered.
D Troll Hunter says Penix's numbers are gaudy. He's got 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2,500 yards, 71%. I mean, they're good. They're not gaudy.
No,
they're nothing
because he's
over the
top. He
top.
have 5 games left.
Yeah, and I mean, and he hasn't been running this year like he's run in the past either. He's been more, stay in the pocket and throw. But he would be my front runner actually. And, he's going to be hurt because he's a West Coast guy, not in Los Angeles, but he would probably be my front runner right now. But I would also say, watch a guy like Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma, as long as they stay undefeated. They struggled a little bit last week to get past UCF, but they're the undefeated team right now and a chance to get to the playoffs. And Jordan Travis, I'm surprised Jordan Travis per Vegas isn't a little bit higher because they're undefeated and they're probably going to end up undefeated. And he's got, pretty good overall numbers as well. He's run for 5 touchdowns, thrown for 15. So those would be mine, I think.
Well, and it's funny because D-Troll Hunter is a big Penix guy, and I get it. We said he's the front runner, and he's like, well, put him up against McCarthy's stats. We just said we don't think McCarthy should be up there. So that's not really an argument.
Penix is at the top of my list. I'm not trying to dog him. I'm just saying he doesn't have numbers that jump off the page at you. I've got the numbers. Here they are. Penix, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2,500 yards, 71%. McCarthy, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,800 yards, 78%. He's got 700 more yards, but again, Michigan runs the ball all the time, which is a knock against McCarthy. He's a game manager. I mean, 78% jumps off the page at you, but again, he's not asked to do that much. So
that's right.
And when you know what's coming, most of the time you should be able to complete 78%.
I'm just saying.
We're not arguing, Troll Hunter. We're
not at all.
We're what did Rod Tidwell say? You think we're arguing? I think we're finally communicating.
It's awesome.
I'm on Penix. Baby. I'm on Penix. Don't worry, I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah, I agree. He'd be my first. I liked him when he was at IU. To be honest with you, I was a Penix fan when he was at IU, and then he had that down year, and then he went to Washington, and he's been killing it. So, yeah.
Here's a tweet from former Notre Dame football coach Charlie Weis.
Fantastic.
So Charlie says, quote, "One request moving forward, please drop the junior when discussing my son. He has earned top billing, and if either of us should be tagged, just call me senior. I am proud of him both on and off the field, and he deserves number 1 status. Just call him Coach Charlie Weis. Thank you." End quote. That is the tweet or the X post from Charlie Weis Sr. for now. So what do you think of this, Vince?
If you didn't want him to be called Junior, you should have given him a different freaking name.
Yes.
Okay.
You gave him the same name you have.
There's a reason that my son's name is Dylan and it's not Vince, because I didn't want him to be a junior. I if you don't want your kid to be called Junior, don't give him your name. You have 100% control over that. Come on, man. That's ridiculous. And he still gets the same respect regardless of what you call him. That's the other thing.
It'd be one thing if he was known as Chuck or Chaz or, Charles or if you want to get into the, whole brevity thing, it's like you gave him the same name as you. We've got to be able to differentiate between the two, because if we just say Charlie Weis, then we're everyone automatically assumes we're talking about the old guy with the crew cut, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to call him something. And he's always been Charlie Weis Jr. Always. Even when he was in high school, going to multiple high schools in the area.
Yes.
He was Charlie Weis Jr. And that's his name. I'm sorry. That'd be stop calling me Vince.
Right.
Don't call me Vince.
What's his middle name? Can he go by his middle name or something? I don't know. I get the sentiment. He's trying to praise his son and talking about,
great.
He's made his own way and all that stuff, but you gave him the same name as you. There's nothing the rest of us can do about that at this point.
And here's the thing. There is a little bit of nepotism involved because of what his name was. Let's be clear on this, because, he was breaking down film in high school. I know this, using the Notre Dame film breakdown and equipment and all of that. Then when he went to college, he was a student coach. Like, those don't really exist, first of all. And they existed because he was on his dad's staff.
Right.
So
he got to be on a D1 staff because of who he was. Now, but the other side of that is he has made his way since then. Like, he was just like Joe Buck. He was given some opportunities because of his name, but he proved himself to be qualified and made his own way after the fact. But his name and who his dad was and how he started out definitely opened up some big doors.
He was given a wonderful foundation.
Yes.
But then he took it to the next level. I will give him full credit for that. And I have a buddy of mine who was coaching at St. Joe High School, that's right across the street from Notre Dame. And Charlie Weiss Jr. was breaking down film for him when he was a high school student at St. Joe. And he would rave about this kid, about how advanced he was at breaking down film and all of those things. So he's obviously got a mind for the game. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. But he was given a nice foundation by his dad and a lot of opportunities that other people wouldn't have gotten. But then he has taken that information and that opportunity, and he has turned it into a career that he's obviously very good at. And so you got to give him credit for that. I mean, he's an offensive coordinator underneath Lane Kiffin. I mean, he has earned whatever accolades that he's gotten up to this point. Maybe a little earlier than some other people would have gotten it, but he has earned it. And I love the fact that his dad is propping him up and saying he's done a wonderful job. But the whole dropping the junior, it's just weird, dude. It's a little too much. Yeah.
Tommy says he's giving me permission to talk about Dallas with his question. Tommy, throw your Cowboys question back in, because I must have missed it somewhere along the line. I apologize, because the way this works is, if it was a Cowboys question, it might have slipped past Vince and he didn't.
It very well could have.
What he does is he puts the stars on the one, and then I stay. I'm in the room where all the stuff is starred up. We try to throw those up there as much as possible.
This is true. I think he did have one though. Yeah, I just don't remember what it was.
Gordian Knott says, I have a lot of gall talking about nepotism. Well, I mean, if you think Jesse's not qualified, then
this is not Jesse's job though either. Let's be real clear on that.
This is a podcast where he gets paid very minimally.
Yes, he does.
And he has a full-time job where, quite frankly, he makes more than both Vince and I.
I have more than both of us combined. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I probably could have told you that when he was a 14-year-old kid, that was going to be the case at some point in his
Jesse
life.
I will say this, and you can kind of make fun of it, and that's fine, because I get it. We both have the same name, and it's whatever, but again, Jesse could be coaching somewhere right now if he wanted to, but that is a very dedicated career path. He could be coaching football someplace if he wanted to right now. But he wanted to be an engineer, and that's what he's doing for an occupation.
And doing well at it, obviously, because he's still gainfully employed.
That's right. So Tommy Gunn says, how would I feel if Lincoln Riley became the Cowboys head coach next season?
The Cowboys looking to make a change?
There's always rumors with Mike McCarthy.
Fair enough.
I think it's interesting. I think that if they changed, Dan Quinn, the current defensive coordinator, would probably be the guy in line, because Jerry Jones has managed to keep Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator just the last 2 years, despite the fact that he's had offseason interest, head coaching interest the last couple of years. I think it would be a really good setup, actually, if Lincoln Riley was the head coach running the offense and Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator, but I don't think that'll probably be the case. And based on Lincoln Riley's disinterest in defense over the years. I don't know that I would necessarily want that. So
yeah,
I guess my long short answer is no. I don't think that that's something I would be interested in.
I mean, I've been asked the same question about the Bears situation. And would you want Lincoln Riley if it was like a guarantee that you got Caleb Williams too? You know, that kind of a thing. And, you know, Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. I think he's better than Justin Fields. But you can't keep just drafting quarterback after quarterback after quarterback and expect it to work. So it's like, I would love for Justin Fields to at least pan out and then just keep putting weapons around him. Like, let's build up that offensive line. Let's, you know, there's a lot of other things that I feel like you could do without wasting your draft capital on a quarterback. So I'm not a fan of Lincoln Riley as a coach, though, either. So the best part of that deal for me would be the quarterback and not the head coach.
Yeah. DK says, does his system transfer to the league? I would say probably not, because they tried this once with Cliff Kingsbury and it bombed pretty quickly. I think he might have some early success, but I just doubt that there would be much staying power in what he's doing in the NFL. I just don't think it would last long enough. And again, like, talk about complementary football and that kind of thing. That's never really been a thing for Lincoln Riley, either at Oklahoma or at USC. And you have to have a lot more complementary football in the NFL. That's not the direction I would want to go. But there's probably someone who would like that. Vince, I mean, you might be in store for, you know, Jim Harbaugh here within a year or so, the way things are working up north right now.
Both situations I would not want to be in. I mean, Jim Harbaugh was a good NFL coach. He's just a little too quirky for my taste. Let's just put it that way.
Yep. Fill in the blank. Your interest in the Arizona Diamondbacks Texas Rangers World Series is blank.
It's about a negative 75,000. Like, it just is not. I have watched. Now, this is because I am a spiteful Cubs fan, but I have watched zero playoff baseball
really
this year. Yeah,
I've meant to ask you, you know, like how much you've watched. So it's not
zero.
been much.
I have not watched one inning of baseball in the postseason. Now a lot has been going on for me off the field, so to speak, since the playoffs have been going on. So that's part of it. I will admit that is part of it. But for baseball, if I'm not at a game, I've got to be at least invested in one of the teams playing to have it on TV. I mean, that's just who I am. Just because of how long the game is and the investment that it takes to watch an entire baseball game, right? I've got to be invested into one of the teams.
Yeah, I was really hoping for Rangers, Phillies. You know, like there's just one. There's no, you know, like you've got two Cinderellas basically. So who do you root for? There's no bad guy in this World Series. I like seeing. I've always liked Bruce Bochy, so I didn't mind seeing the Rangers go. Adolis Garcia has just been a beast during the postseason. He's got like 7 home runs and he's driven in more than 20, I think, during the postseason. But it's like nobody knows who anybody is on either one of these teams. At least if the Phillies had gone, one, they're fun to watch. They've got a great home atmosphere. But I mean, you've got Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner and Bryce Harper and Honor. You know,
I would have watched at least one of the World Series games that the Phillies were involved.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Max Scherzer for the Rangers, it's like the only guy anybody knows on either team, I think. And you know, he kind of limped into the postseason, even though I think he pitched the clincher for the Rangers. You know, he started the clincher for the Rangers against the Astros. But I don't know, like. Mine is barely existent, at least a little bit more. My interest is at least a little bit more existent than yours. But
it doesn't take much.
Not by much.
Yeah.
Not by much. So here's an interesting one, I think. Brian Curtis, the host of the Press Box podcast, he joined me to talk some college football media this summer here on this show. He said this week on his podcast, the Press Box, that he thinks all reporters should be required to sit in the stands like regular fans at least once a year. Do you buy or sell that?
I sell it, but I do want to explain my sell. Okay.
Sure.
When we are
what we're here for.
Us, I know, right? When we are covering a game, not from a play-by-play standpoint, because that's a whole different ball of wax. But like for us, when we're covering a Notre Dame football game, we've got our laptops, we're typing, we are, writing a story, taking notes.
Are we sitting in the stands planning, or are we sitting in the stands trying to get our work done as well?
So that would be very difficult to do your job in the stands. So that would be the sell part of it for me. The buy part of it for me, though, there are some members of the media, I'll leave it at that, who are very spoiled. Very, that's beneath me. That is this, that is that.
Right.
Their asses belong in some fan seats every now and again to keep them humble. I do
agree with that. I do agree with that.
So, but it would be hard to do your job. That's the only problem. It would be very difficult to do your job.
It would be hard to do your job. And, we don't have this Connor guy from Michigan out there buying tickets for everybody to sit out in the stands. Someone's got to pay for those.
That is true.
When we go to the games we're sitting in the press box, we've got a press pass, and we don't have to pay for a press pass.
This is true.
Just have to do our jobs and get the credential and sit there and do our jobs. You go sit in the stands, it's going to cost some money. You got to start shelling out some money.
That would be if they said, hey, there's one game where you're not going to be in the press box and you have to buy a ticket, I'd be like, I'll watch the game from home. Like that's what would happen for me.
That's exactly right. Now, I understand, and I agree with the perspective that you're talking about, and like what Brian Curtis is saying here, I think that it probably would give some people a different perspective that maybe you sort of you haven't had for a while, that maybe you need a little bit. But at the same time, I don't sit in the stands for the games I cover, but I have sat in this, we've both gone to Cubs games, baseball games. I've been to some NFL games and stuff like that. So I've sat in the stands at different points, not necessarily for the games that I'm covering. But you definitely do have a different perspective when you're sitting out there in the stands versus in that sheltered cocoon that you're in the press box.
It's a majorly different situation. And like the year after COVID, I did sit in the stands for a couple of different games because Brian wanted to go to the game and he wasn't able to sit in the press box. And so he and I sat in the stands and we each had our notebook and we were like trying to take notes, and it was fun because we're friends and it was a fun atmosphere and we enjoyed the game, that kind of thing. But I didn't have near the notes and near the work that I was able to get done that I do when I'm in the press box because I didn't have my laptop. I didn't, you know what I mean? I was just scribbling notes in a notebook. And it was like 85 degrees. So it was like sweating and trying to take the notes. And it's like, so it is very difficult to do your job, but I have done it. It's just, I enjoy being a fan, to be honest with you, but I tell you what, over the last 20 years though, Sean, I've kind of had the fan beat out of me to a degree.
And maybe that's kind of what Brian Curtis is referring to a little bit, because you do, you do get it beaten out of you when you do a job like this. It's
you're not allowed to cheer. You're not
right,
because I was a fan of Notre Dame before I ever followed, covered Notre Dame, right?
Right.
And and Sean can attest to this. Those first couple of years in the press box, I was a little out of control, like trying to cheer. He's like, dude, you can't do that. I'm like, I'm sorry, but now it's just like we're just kind of fist bumping each other and like doing some things like that. And it's just, the cheering. I sit in the stands and I'm just like, I don't say anything. So,
and that's why it's fun to still call games, because even though you're not literally cheering, like
you can get excited.
You can get excited about things in different ways.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. Yep.
Good call.
Yep. All right. Well, that's, but as I just said, as Mr. 2.0, Ryan Harris does it on the air. That's exactly right. As announcers, especially as the color analyst.
Yeah.
When you're attached to the school.
Yes.
You can definitely do that.
100%. I have no problem with it.
A lot different. We'll slip one question in here at the end before we wrap up. Kevin, is this the best secondary since the glory years? I say yes.
As a whole, yeah. Top to bottom.
And specifically corners. Even I think it's the best set of corners that they've had. At least since like going back to the Bobby Taylor years, and in that era, like early 90s and that kind of thing, for sure.
We have been lamenting for a great corner combo for years and years and years. And we were always told you can't get good defensive linemen and you can't get good corners to come to Notre Dame. Obviously, that myth has been busted, right? And I hope that continues. There's a lot of talent on this roster at the cornerback position, and there's more coming. And so I just hope this is the beginning of a trend, frankly.
Done a great job both recruiting that position and
coaching it up. Position. Yeah, no doubt.
Yep, for sure. All right, well, we will wrap it up with that. Hit that like button, please. And, of course, subscribe, rate, review. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Yeah, baby.